The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Folks, it's finally here, a top 10 matchup between Indiana and Oregon. We've previewed this game all week long. People are talking about it. It's the nation's biggest game of the week. It's the Hoosiers and the Ducks.
Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity, to be sure. It's a big chance for Indiana. I don't mean that in a patronizing way. You know, they have not beaten what a lot of people see as a tier one brand in college football, and I have given them their flowers over on Locked On College Football, and my top 25 has Indiana in the top 5 because of the manner in which they beat Illinois. You can't look away or disregard Indiana if they go to Autzen Stadium and win. They would be just the second team since Dan Lanning arrived in Eugene to win at Autzen Stadium. The national champions lost at Autzen last year. It has been a great home field advantage no matter who's been the head coach, but Dan Lanning has taken that and really run with it. There have been some big games played here. Game day for Ohio State last year, game day with UCLA, how the mighty have fallen, by the way, in 2022. A big game against Utah in 2022 as well. You know, the list goes on, but this one is certainly up there. Anytime you've got a top 10 team coming to town, it's a tremendous opportunity for Oregon to bolster their resume, prove that, you know, to those who think, oh, see, Penn State's a fraud, they're not any good. Well, all right, they can't all be frauds, right? Like, if you beat two top 10 teams in a row, I think it would say a lot about where Dan Lanning has his program right now in year 4 after coming over from Georgia, and he's done a great job, and this would just be another boy. I think more than anything, if Oregon winds up winning this game, especially if they do so comfortably, like if they cover that 7.5 point number, win the game by 10 to 14 points, I think Oregon fans once again will just be saying, man, we got the right guy in charge.
Look, Dan Lanning is a great coach, and the fact that Oregon's been able to keep him, and I think will keep him for the foreseeable future, there's no reason for him to go anywhere, especially with Oregon now being a
He turned down the Alabama job.
Yeah.
Alabama was highly interested in hiring Dan Lanning to be their head coach. I have that on good authority. And Lanning said, we saw the video that he put out. He's good.
I mean, why would you, right? You're one of the best teams in the Big Ten, and you're in the P4 conference now. You're good to go. And that's why Oregon is such a good team, a good program, and a tough place to play. And it seems like, though, Spencer, and you alluded to it there a little bit, so many people are talking about the opportunity for Indiana, right? Indiana can go and do this and do that and earn the respect. And I do think the Hoosiers have the chance to do that. But I'm glad you brought that up, that Oregon can get a big win for their resume too, because who knows what happens to Penn State from this point on. They could be 8-4, 7-5, 9-3, who knows, right? But if you beat Indiana, the Hoosiers are still a good football team, and I think will still go on and win most of their games. This is a resume builder no matter who wins it, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's one that, with both teams being undefeated right now, as long as no major injuries happen or there isn't some cataclysmic fall off.
Nice word.
Thank you. I think the winner of this game is a guarantee to the college football playoff. I think the loser is still in control of their own destiny to get there, and I think both will make it. You know, I didn't have Indiana as a preseason playoff pick. I thought they'd miss it by one game because, perhaps infamously at this point, I thought they would lose to Illinois. But I still picked them to go 9-3, and I think 10-2 with their schedule should get them into the college football playoff. So if they win this game, there's no way they're going to go 10-2. And if Oregon wins this game, I don't think there's any way that they will go 10-2 or gosh, I guess there is. College football is crazy. I never say never.
Sure.
It's just that when you look at what these teams have done, what they're capable of, and then what this win will mean for you, like that's the dual element of this to me, is it doesn't just show, you know, what you're capable of, but it gives you that win because I think the other team is also that good that I just don't see how you could make how you could miss the playoff if, you know, barring an injury to one of these starting quarterbacks who are both great. And I also want to say I love this coaching matchup.
It's awesome. It's fantastic.
I think it's phenomenal. I think you have two of the 5 to 8 best coaches in all of college football, and frankly, I don't know how low Cignetti can go outside of the top 5 on the list. Indiana is playing on College game day in his 2nd year. Billy Napier could never.
And you're talking, I think, from several aspects here, from game planning, motivation, in-game coaching, in-game adjustments. Like, he just does all the right things. And I remind people, he comes from the Saban coaching tree. He's old school, man. People make fun of his age. That's fine, but he's old school. And that's what Indiana needed. And it's clearly working, right? And you've got old school versus new school. And again, I love Dan Lanning. I think he's an incredible coach, and he's going to be at Oregon for a long time. But yeah, I'm with you. You've got two dudes going at it who are some of the best in the game of college football, and it could come down to that. It could come down to a coaching decision or a matchup here or there, which we're going to talk about in just a few moments, and all of that is coaching. But I'll remind people, Indiana's 2 losses last year against Ohio State and Notre Dame, they didn't get out-schemed. They didn't get out-game-planned or out-coached. They just got outmatched. They were out-talented. It was clear with the Buckeyes and the Fighting Irish, who played for the national title. They were just better than Indiana. This is a game this week for Oregon and Indiana. The Hoosiers are closer to Oregon than they've been against a top 10 team in a long time in terms of talent. It comes down to coaching and execution this week and on Saturday in Autzen, and I think Indiana has every chance to do that, Spencer.
It does. I still think there's a talent edge for the Ducks here.
But it's a lot smaller than people think.
I think it's a lot smaller than last year, because when you say what people think, what I assume you're referring to is those who are going to, call back in their minds to the Notre Dame game and the Ohio State game and say, see, they weren't even close. No, this team is more talented than that. That much is clear. With the guys they brought back, the guys they brought in, and just the way they've played this year. Last year's Indiana team was really good. I think if they'd played this year's Illinois team, they would have won the football game. I don't think they would have won the game 63-10. Maybe they would have only won it, 38-17 or something like that. I think that they have definitely made strides in a number of areas, particularly up front. I heard this stat from Oregon's radio analyst Mike Jorgensen earlier this week. Indiana, through 5 games, Jacob, has generated 49 tackles for loss. That's a crazy stat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you're playing. That's a testament to the talent, the game plan, and the execution week in and week out. That's about 10 negative plays generated per game on average this year. And a lot of those came against Illinois, who is a good Big Ten team. They're not great, but they are good. I think they get blown out by Ohio State this week. But I just think that for Indiana, their defense cannot be overlooked. I think when people have a first impression of Indiana, it's the offense, because they throw the ball so well.
Yep.
And it should be. But this is not a defense that is to be trifled with. If Oregon's offense goes out in this game, Jacob, and outperforms my statistical prediction and puts up 38 points, my takeaway is going to be, man, can we just sign Will Stein to a raise now and keep him off the coaching carousel for one more year? Because I think this Indiana defense is good, but the good news for the Oregon offense, balance is the key.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Buckeyes' rushing attack is improving, and it has shown improvement week after week. However, it must take another leap to reach championship form, which is the goal. You want to make sure that at Ohio State, every single position is at championship form, from the quarterback to the offensive line, D-line, and everything in between. You want to make sure that there aren't any holes on the team. For the running backs, entering the year, you knew there were going to be two guys that were primarily going to be the ball carriers for the team, and C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples. No one truly knew how Bo Jackson would jump onto the scene. There was a thought that he may have the highest ceiling among those three running backs, but he's a true freshman. And there's two things any true freshman running back has to deal with and must work on very hard before getting on the field. That's ball security, and that is pass protection. And those are two things that Bo Jackson has worked very hard at. And you could have seen the growth and his ability to be pretty good in pass protection. Ball security is still something that he is still working on, but there isn't a running back playing football at any level that isn't still working on ball security. So that's not just something that Ryan Ed's going to preach to Bo Jackson. He's going to give it to Peoples and Donaldson and anybody else in the RB room, really anybody else that touches the ball, because securing the ball is key. But this rushing attack it's weird to put a handle on, to put a finger on and say, this is what it is. This is where, no, you know what it is. You might not know where it can be. Will it be what it was a year ago? Probably not, because I think Ohio State will still be using three running backs all year long. So it won't be a two-headed monster of Henderson and Judkins. I believe it'll be more of a three-headed monster in Donaldson, Peoples, and Jackson. And like we mentioned earlier in the week on this show, in regards to Bo Jackson, maybe he is better as a backup right now versus being a guy that's a starter. And I used some connections and some thoughts that came into my head from the NBA, because it's very easy to use those things. With the NBA, there are certain guys that are better off the bench versus guys that are starters. And there may be guys that are starters that need the ball in their hand the first 2 to 3 times down the court to make sure that they stay engaged, because if you don't, they're mentally not locked in. And we have seen Bo Jackson be phenomenal off the bench. The only times he has rushed for over 100 yards was when he was a backup. He was a starter last week. Looked pretty good. I think they changed the play calls up that limited his productivity based off what he was doing the previous time he was on the field. But I think Bo Jackson has been fine. For the rushing attack, the numbers tell a story, but I think down the road, you might see some games where James Peoples is the lead back. You might see a game where Bo Jackson is a lead back. It's same for Donaldson. It's almost a similar thing to Cardinal Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Whichever guy is going on that day, feed him. But do it in the flow of the offense. Don't force feed him to where the offense isn't flowing very well because you're trying to make sure somebody's happy. No, you feed him in the flow of the offense. And there may be people like you, because I know I do this all the time, where I say feed Bo, or I really had to say feed CJ. And really I ain't said feed James yet, because they haven't shown the type of running ability that Bo Jackson has already showed. But I believe that there will be times that I'll be out there tweeting with my computer right there while watching the game, where I will start saying, feed Bo. Give him the rock. Run the ball. Because if you want to make a quarterback's job easier, you want to make sure you give that man, the guys behind him, the ball. Because that's going to do certain things to the defense. That's going to dictate certain calls based off certain looks that Ohio State is doing. One thing that Tom Brady did very, very well, not only with setting up the run game, but the Patriots always used motion to try to figure out if the defense is in a man or a zone. Now, granted, they can change that post-snap, and it can be something that trips you up. But if going in motion allows you to get some shifting going on with the defense, well, that will help the running back get a quick picture of, okay, they're motioning to the right, but somebody's not moving, which means they might be in that gap where I was planning on going. Maybe this play is still going to be ran and we go somewhere else, or maybe we alter and call an audible. Those things are very important. So I think for the Buckeyes rushing attack, it's easy to complain, but the Buckeyes are averaging 171.6 rushing yards per game. Comparing that to the team they're playing this week, I think you'll be satisfied with not only Ohio State's rushing attack, but how they stack up to other teams. Illinois is only averaging 130.7 rushing yards per game with a pretty poor 3.7 yards per carry. Ohio State's averaging 5.1 yards a carry. So we can gripe and complain and say, oh, the rushing attack isn't good or it needs to be worked on. That is true. I'm not saying it's not. What's also true is that the rushing attack, while it needs to improve, has done a lot of things pretty well this year. Some numbers for you on the guys that are the three lead backs for Ohio State. Bo Jackson leads the way in among these three in carries, rushing yards per carry. He doesn't lead the team in rushing touchdowns, though. Bo Jackson has 48 carries, 360 yards, 7.5 yards a pop, and 2 touchdowns. Donaldson, 45 carries, 193 rushing yards, 4.3 yards a pop, and 4 touchdowns. The last part might shock you. James Peoples has 35 carries, 195 rushing yards, 5.6 yards a pop. So he has 10 less carries than Donaldson, but has a higher yards per carry average and has 2 more rushing yards. And that is a big reason why. And I didn't even know that before putting this show together. I think that's a big reason why you might see Peoples more often than you see Donaldson. And by the middle of the year, well, more so in November, when you get to Penn State and beyond, all those games in November, you might see a scenario where Bo Jackson starts and Peoples is the first back off the bench, and Donaldson turns into your short yardage back. But where he's not only a short yardage back, that might be his role for this team. And one thing Shaquille O'Neal always says, another basketball reference here on the show, is that you cannot win a championship without the others. You can't. And you think about what Shaq did with the Lakers and in Miami, it was the others. You had an older Gary Payton there in Miami who was very pivotal and big for the Heat to win the NBA Finals. You had in this repeat with the Lakers, guys like Derek Fisher and Devin George. I haven't said that name in a long time. You had guys that were the others, Robert Horry, Big Shot Bob. You had guys that were the perfect role players for that team, for the team to win not 1, not 2, but 3 NBA championships. And if Ohio State wants to win back-to-back national championships, they're going to have to get the running game to get up to speed a little bit quicker. I know the numbers aren't bad, but the numbers can be better. And I think it's the biggest thing for this team to do to get the championship form is to figure out the right rotation, figure out how to get one guy hot and figure out what he works best with, and then roll with the punches. The best thing about Ohio State's schedule is you have not so much the next 2 games being on the road, but there is an off week in between the road trip to Camp Randall and then the home game against Penn State. Because I think that game is going to be a big statement for Ohio State. I have Ohio State winning that game. I'll make that known here early on, a few weeks before that game is played. I think Ohio State wins. Not sure by how much, but I do think in that game you could see Ohio State, instead of trying to throw the ball all around the yard, try to set the tone in the trenches.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I want to bet in the moment, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Julian Lewis is coming around the mountain when he comes.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes.
Jordan, I banged the table for Caden Salter. I said he was the guy. I thought he was the guy. And then he continues to just not really be the guy. And I think it's a combination of, I don't think Colorado put him in the best position to succeed. I didn't like that they benched him. I don't think that the offense was built around him well enough. And then I also think he's prone to making some mistakes. Obviously, he threw 3 picks against TCU in the first half. I think it's time for Colorado to move on to Julian Lewis. When Deion Sanders was asked if they were moving on to Julian Lewis, he said he'll be coming around the mountain when he comes. I don't know what that means, but I do know the Buffs play a top 25 team this week against Iowa State, Would you put Julian Lewis in against a top 25 team, or is that too soon, or is it just something you like where it's like, hey, if he's ready, he's ready?
Honestly, that's an interesting topic. I feel like, in my opinion, it would be a good thing, not necessarily the greatest thing, but I think it would be a good thing if you were to get experience going into this game. But I still believe that Kaden Salter is your guy through and throughout the year.
Okay.
Juju's already missed about half I wouldn't say missed this half the season, but he hasn't played for about half the season, and then throwing him in the fire against a top 25 team is, interesting. Interesting
One
to say
word.
the least. Like it'll be that would be, there's not much I can say about that. My
Would you
honest
do it?
opinion, I would not.
Okay.
I would not. I would not throw a freshman quarterback that is still I think he may have just turned 18 or he's still 17. I'm not sure which one.
Mhm.
But I would not throw a freshman quarterback in against a top 25 team. This is not the game that you want to really start trying to test your mettle with the youngsters. It could be a great, it could go both ways, but I feel like it could go both ways badly. Like if he wins the game and he goes out there, greatest confidence booster ever for a freshman. But you start a freshman against a top 25 team after only having been played against Delaware
Yeah.
and throw him into an offense that hasn't been, as powerful as they've wanted it with Caden Salter. And now you're
Mhm.
throwing a freshman in at the helm that hasn't really gotten much game experience against a team that is pretty well experienced and well versed when it comes to playing with each other. Um, I don't see Julian Lewis starting this game. I think if the score were to go, up high enough or low far enough, I feel like he would get a little bit of experience in.
Yeah.
But Colorado has always had a problem with their quarterback this year, and to keep giving up and trying out new quarterbacks to go from, Salter to a shootout to Ryan Staub back to Salter, give him 2 games, and now it's like, okay, we don't think Salter's doing it. We don't know what's
Mhm.
going on behind the scenes, but his
Yeah.
play hasn't been, the Colorado standard that we're used to.
Mhm.
And to throw in Juju, I don't believe that that would be their best option. I feel like if they were to do anything, they would have to go back with Staub.
Yeah.
Staub has shown that he is pretty well versed with the offense. He does know what he's doing back there in those moments. Um, it's a toss up between him and Staub right now because neither of them have shown that they are able to finish a game. Neither of them have shown that, hey, we can do this and I can be the guy to take over and make the right read and, make the right play. Both of them have their flaws, both of them have their advantages.
Right.
But we haven't seen the killer instinct from either one that they've talked about. And Coach Prime speaking on Juju and you saying, you know, he'll come around the mountain when he comes. I feel like that's a subtle nod. It's not that we're going to use him now and waste his red shirt considering that he hasn't played for 5, 6 games.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's more so this is going to be a building process for Juju, not the team, for Juju.
Yeah.
He's going to get used to being able to be in those kinds of situations. I'm not saying that he's going to start, but I feel like they're going to use him in those signs of certain situations and everything. And uh, I feel like he'll get enough experience that next year when they come back, they'll have him as a starter for sure. Like I
Yeah.
believe that Juju is the future, and if they were to look towards the future, they would want to get Juju experience now, without burning his full red shirt.
Yeah.
They stick out with Caden Salter. They need to stick out with Caden Salter. Caden's been the one that, through thick and through thin, he's still there. He had the issues, whether it was, off the field or on the field, with the coaches that he has worked through, and he believe Coach Prime talked highly on him. I believe that Caden Stalter still can be the person for Colorado. He's shown that he has great flashes. He's shown that he has good talent, natural run ability. He has an arm. He's able to throw the ball. It's just he he panics a little bit in the pocket. He panics a little bit and tries to force a big play when it's not. And we saw that with TCU when they ended up with 3 picks in the first half. And not saying that, TCU was the absolute best of the best, but I feel
Right.
like Kader Salter could have made better decisions in those
Mhm.
certain situations. He had open players, he had open receivers. I feel like that he either looked off and took
Yeah.
off running or overthrew trying to go for a big chunk of yards and it
Yeah.
ended up backfiring on him. So
Yeah. Caden Salter, he has this talent. It's just we're not seeing him put it all together this year. And I didn't watch enough of him at Liberty to really know if he constantly throws sidearm, but that was something that RG3, who was calling the game, he was focused on a lot. He's throwing a lot of passes sidearm, and it's kind of affecting his accuracy. In terms of Julian Lewis starting, I think the hard part is I feel like you want to keep Julian Lewis happy because obviously he's the future, right? You, as much as you want to contend for something, if you quickly realize like, hey, this isn't our year, I don't think you keep throwing Caden Salter out there because I mean, at the end of the day, like this is the cutthroat part of college football is like Caden Salter is not the future of the program. Like he was never going to be. He was just sort of like a stopgap for Julian Lewis. But I do think that there's probably a better time to bring Julian Lewis in now that we're talking about it because you mentioned something that really stuck out to me, which is his red shirt. I believe Julian has only played against Delaware, so that's one game, right? So you get 4. You can play in 4 before you have to red shirt. I think Iowa State and Utah, which Utah's probably going to be ranked when Colorado plays them, both really tough defenses, both really tough teams to sort of just throw a true freshman in against. So I would probably wait until November 8th at West Virginia. Obviously, you on the road is a tough start, but West Virginia is probably the worst team in the Big 12 or one of the worst teams in the Big 12. And then you have Arizona State and Kansas State, right? You sort of preserve Julian Lewis for those last 3 games. At this point, you give Caden Salter 3 more games to figure it out, or Ryan Staub, whoever. And then the last 3 games, you go, okay, Julian, this is you. Like, we're getting ready for next year. We're getting you ready. We're getting you snaps. So, yeah, I think you could attest to this. I think it'd be important to preserve his red shirt. So that way, like, you still get Julian Lewis for X amount of years, right? It doesn't feel like, okay, we burned his red shirt just to go 5-7 or whatever it is, right?
Exactly. So I feel like at this point in time, they still have a chance of going to a bowl game.
They do, yeah.
So there's not like, oh, the season is completely over with for us. On
Mhm.
the contrary, you still have time to go out there, make wins, and make yourself a bowl game. And I feel like Colorado has the potential to do it. But this quarterback situation of switching in and out and figuring all this out, that can't keep happening. They
Yeah.
have to either stick with Caden Salter, they have to either give it to Staub. They can't give it to Juju this year. Like you were saying, they could wait for the last 3 games, or if a certain game were to go up by a lot or down by a lot, like say this game we go against this
I would
week, not
say,
TCU.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would,
If we were to go up, say 21, 28 points, I would throw Juju in there and just, you know, let him get a experience against a top 25 team. He might not do the best, but hey, at least he knows what he has to look against instead of, you know, just going in and playing a defense that is subpar. He'd be going against a pretty good defense within that team.
yeah,
And I feel like he would get a little bit of experience, not the full game experience where the entire weight is on his shoulders and he's, having to deal with the top 25 team from the get go. You
yeah,
know, I would rather him go in there, whether they're up by a lot or down by a lot, and just, get out there, get a little bit of experience in, and then the last 2 games of the season, last 3 games of the season, possibly throw him in there. Um, but Julian Lewis is definitely the future. We
yeah,
have Caden Salter, he's right now. He needs to figure it out and lead this team to a bowl game. It's either going to be on him or it's going to be on Stop. And I feel like they're sticking with Caden because, they've had this quarterback issue all year and they can't just keep going back and forth and back and forth.
right.
Um, I believe that they're going to stick with Salter all the way until, they either reach a bowl game or they don't reach a bowl game.
Yeah,
And
and I don't. I think that's sort of. I feel weird because I was like, why did you go away from Salter? And like now I'm like in my head I'm like it's time to go away from Salter, but it's like I'm a hypocritical now because it's like you got to ride with him for at least the next few games, right? Give him time, I guess. I don't know. I think the hard part with the Salter thing is like we've seen the flashes, but we've also like have seen the struggles, and it's like it
yeah,
feels like the struggles are outweighing the flashes. So it's like you want that to turn around, but you can't keep giving up on quarterbacks because that sets a bad precedent. Because even then, it's like if you're Julian Lewis, it's like okay, how long do I get before they turn on me, right? Like
yeah.
I think Shador Sanders. This is a weird sort of thing, but like Shador Sanders almost spoiled Colorado in a way
I was
because
about
of
to say the exact same thing. I
it's
was about to
like
say we're so used to like
yeah,
Colorado's so used to under the prime era having top, in my opinion, top 32 quarterback. And I feel like they have it spoiled. I feel like
Yeah.
Colorado isn't used to um, winning as many games. Because if we were to talk about the time before Coach Prime era, um, I'm not saying that Colorado wasn't the best, but records do speak for themselves.
They weren't
And
great. They weren't great.
yeah, and they've had great college quarterbacks, so I guess
Yeah.
Colorado would definitely know like what it takes to be a good college quarterback. So they have
Hmm.
a pretty keen eye. But I do feel like we haven't give Caden Salter the full benefit of being a true quarterback for Colorado.
Yeah.
Um,
To go from Shador, who like holds the NCAA record all time for completion percentage and like was literally wheeling and dealing, even like when you guys in your 2023 season, even when you guys were struggling, it felt like Shador was like always trying to like, he was always making plays. Like there was
yeah,
no game where it was like, okay, Shador threw 5 picks and we were out of it by the first quarter. Like that didn't happen, right? Like there
yeah,
was no Caden Salter game where it's 3 picks in the first quarter and we're blowing leads. Like Shador was doing his thing, and I think it sort of set Colorado fans up to be like, all you have to do is be Shador. And it's like, guess what? Not many people are Shador, so that's
not many people can be. But then
yeah,
again, Caden Salter, I feel like with we've talked about it time and time again. He's shown flashes. He's shown talent. He's
mhm,
shown that he can make a proper read and make a proper throw and gain chunks of yards. At the
yeah,
end of the day, though, he simply just has to put it all together.
yeah.
We're not asking you to be Shador. We're just asking you to be the best Caden Salter you can be.